Albany School Board Candidate Forum. My name is Elisa Mills of the League of Women Voters of Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not support or oppose candidates or parties. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. However, this forum is presented by the Voter Services and Education arm of the League, which does not take positions or advocate for them. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under ground rules set for this forum. These ground rules are posted in Eventbrite. Candidates are not permitted to display campaign buttons, t-shirts, signs, Zoom backgrounds, etc., in order to maintain neutrality. We are recording tonight's forum, and the session will be available on our website, lwvbae.org, through votersedge.org/ca, with links on our social media accounts at lwvbae. This forum is for the Albany School Board. There are 3 candidates running for this position. They are Brian Beall, Veronica Davidson, and Melissa Boyd. On your ballot, you will be able to choose 2 candidates out of the 3. Now let's go over a few ground rules. Each candidate has 2 minutes for opening remarks. The order was determined by drawing lots. The timekeeper will signal candidates with a green colored window, which will count down the seconds from 2 minutes down to 15 seconds to go, when it will turn yellow, and then red when the full 2 minutes is up. As people signed up via Eventbrite, they could submit written questions. If you have additional questions, you may type those in by clicking the Q&A icon. Our volunteers will take the questions and pass them to the moderator. All questions will be screened to avoid duplication and personal attacks. The order of answering the questions will be alternated, and each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. Again, the timekeeper will signal candidates. There will be no separate rebuttals. However, the candidates may choose to use some or all of their 1 minute to rebut a response given by another candidate. Following the questions, each candidate shall have 1 minute for a closing statement. Now let's begin with our first candidate, and each candidate will give an opening statement of 2 minutes, and we shall begin with Veronica Davidson.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here with these other candidates. I was actually born in Albany in the house that we live in now, but I grew up in Berkeley and attended Berkeley Public Schools and then went on to Mills College. After getting my teaching credential, I returned to the Bay Area, and I taught for 1 year as a paraeducator in a 2nd grade class at Cornell Elementary, and then had my own business here, working with students who were homeschooled, offering group support classes and tutoring students in Albany and the surrounding districts. Then last year, my oldest son entered kindergarten at Cornell, and it seemed like a great time for me to enter back into the public school classrooms. So I took a position at Cornell as a 1st grade teacher last year and just loved it. It was fantastic. With the distance learning and the FTEs and the way things worked out, it didn't make sense for me to return to a classroom full-time this year. So I'm really excited for a way to stay connected with Albany Unified School District. I have a lot of relationships with teachers in our district, with parents in our city, with the business community. I own a small business in Albany on San Pablo Avenue called Ocean View Brewworks with my husband. And we've run so many events there to support the Albany schools. We contribute to all of the auctions at the schools. We host fundraisers for the schools and for the broader Albany student community. So Armada Aquatics, we were working on a couple musical events before COVID hit, and we just do our best to, support because it's important to us. I have a kindergartner a 1st grader this year and a 4-year-old. And we just love being in Albany, and I really look forward to supporting the teachers, the parents, the students. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Beall. I sometimes pronounce it Beall. Anyway, I grew up in Richmond, went to John F. Kennedy High, got a bachelor's degree in mathematics from UC Berkeley. I came to Albany in 2006 at the insistence of my mother-in-law from China, and because of the schools. And so my daughter went through most of her schools here. Around 2013, I started getting involved with the community. I hosted National Night Out. I took the CERT program. Eventually, I was on the Social and Economic Justice Commission. And, you know, at that point, I got into some of the issues that are the equity issues and the soda tax. I helped get funding for the crossing guards that was missing. I also wanted to say I'm the one candidate in this race that's endorsed by the Alameda Democratic County Central Committee, which represents the California Democratic Party. Because I represent the values of the California Democratic Party, and that's been shown in the actions in the community, how I've supported these programs. In terms of my priorities for the schools, the top priority is the safe reopening of school, helping us get through the crisis we're in. I feel that my background in computer technology and emergency management will be ideal in helping find solutions to this. I come in from a background of educators. My father and an uncle on my mom's side were physics professors, a long tradition of education in the family, and on my wife's side of the family. So I think I'd ask you to really look into my candidacy and some of the things that maybe help take things in a different direction for Albany. Thank you.
Okay, and now Melissa.
Hi, my name is Melissa Boyd. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address people this evening and have the chance to introduce ourselves. I've been living in Albany for 7 years. I have 2 daughters who are both in Albany public schools. My older daughter just started 6th grade at the middle school, and my younger daughter is in 3rd grade at Marin. Before being at the middle school, my big daughter was at Marin also, and my little daughter before being at Marin was at ACC for TK, Transitional Kindergarten. In addition to being a parent in the district, I have served as an officer for the last 2 years in the district's Black Parent Advisory Group, which is a district-wide group. I also was a part of a couple other parents who formed at Marin Elementary the IDEA Committee, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. And I've served as an officer in that committee for the last 2 years as well. Really being able to work on that committee, on Marin's IDEA Committee, which in addition to parents who are the majority of the committee, we have a couple of teachers who are on the committee as well, and our administrator at Marin. Just especially during this time of long distance learning and sheltering in place, really gave me an opportunity to become more aware of the disproportionate needs in the district right now that have always existed but are exacerbated as we are dealing with these issues of who has access to technology, what caregivers are able to be home, not be home, children who learn differently, and how they're able to be served by the district. And it's really largely through doing that work and working with others that I became excited about the chance to advocate for all the different members of our community, especially those with the smallest voices. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. And now we'll start with the questions, and we'll vary the order of who will answer, the order of the answering. But for the first question, for Brian, what is your plan to make Albany schools more safe and welcoming for students of color?
So I like what the students at Albany schools are doing now. I like the initiatives that are coming from the students, and I think they're the key to all of this. particularly there's something called diversify the narrative, diversify your narrative. I think we need to support those efforts. I think there's more is needed in the area of ethnic education and in helping students to understand, particularly to some degree, it's not the Black students, it's the white and Asian students that need to understand more about the history of just we can't just treat people equally all the time. You can't expect someone who came from a poor community that didn't have an access to the education we have to behave in the same way and achieve the same results. So I think it's really about understanding, and also about understanding local history and understanding how Albany came to be and how it did have some racist past, so then we just kind of need to stick on the positive train. And one of the things I did was I helped get the Loving Day proclamation passed through the Social and Economic Justice Commission to make a statement about interracial marriage. So I think we need symbolic things, we need real action.
Thank you. Next, could we hear from Melissa on the same question?
Sure, thank you. And I'm realizing that my children are being somewhat loud, so I apologize if that ever is distracting. I would say that it's a really important question, and thank you for asking it. I think that it's so important for one to have there be professional development opportunities and resources for teachers and administrators that are where we have the opportunity to learn from people who have given their careers to being as knowledgeable as possible about the ways in which we can all be more deliberate and more thoughtful and more aware of the difficulties of being a member of a minority group, and perhaps being perceived in a certain way by a teacher who might not be a member of that same group. And I think it's important to keep in mind that even when we have good intentions, and I believe that we are lucky enough to live in an area where the vast majority of people do, there's more to it than that. And so having those resources in place so that people can really learn what needs to be done is very important. I think it's important for the school board to be deliberate about reaching out to members of different groups. There are various parent advisory groups and engagement groups, and we all need to listen to each other and not think that we know what other groups need, but really be very careful and thoughtful and quiet about listening. And that goes for all different members of different groups, to hear from them directly the ways in which they can be supported.
Okay, thank you. And Veronica?
Thank you. Those are some really great ideas, and many of which I have similar feelings on. I really like what the students are doing currently in Albany at the high school level. They have some wonderful ideas and they feel very passionate about it, and they've put a lot of work and effort into changing the narrative. And I think that's really fantastic. I went to Berkeley High and Mills College, and as part of both of those educational experiences, we had ethnic studies a couple of times. And that really resonated with me because it was an open dialogue about these issues from a young age. And it was repeated a few times. And I think that's something really important that we can incorporate, is keeping that dialogue going throughout school. I also think that the teachers are very aware of this, but sometimes in Albany, our curriculum or our planned lessons are maybe stalled a little bit, and we need to think outside the box into the new times that we're in to update our curriculums to incorporate more of our student population. There are so many resources around us in the Bay Area that there's no reason we can't tap into supports to bring in speakers, to bring in certain cultural events. We've done some with assemblies, but I think it needs to be an everyday way of teaching in our classrooms, and a way of living in our city of Albany. And that's something else that I feel like we need to do on a bigger level than just in the schools. It's a community-wide conversation that we need to continue having.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is we're gonna explore this a little bit more, and we're gonna start with Melissa. So one questioner feels that the anti-Semitic and racist incidents in 2017 were not well handled. What more would you do to heal any remaining tensions in the high school and in the community around these events? And how would you seek to educate all students about differences?
Thank you. So I think that it would have been very important for members of the administration in the district to speak directly with parents. And I am an attorney, so I understand that there is an importance as far as keeping certain things confidential when there's a lawsuit in place. But I think that people's individual feelings and their hurts were not treated as if they were central and important, and there was a personal touch that was missing for those families who felt that they weren't supported and affirmed as members of our district. I think that, as Veronica was talking about, these are complicated issues, and they're not issues that are solved in one step, but need to be conversations that are happening, that are continuing. The district administrator, school board, et cetera, needs to, as I said before, reach out to members of different groups and make very clear that their presence there is important, that their presence at board meetings is important, give them an opportunity to address the board and talk about the issues that are important to different members of those communities. And I think, again, even when there are good intentions, we need to make resources available to bring in professionals for whom this is their focus, so that they can engage students and know the ways to make students feel empowered and feel supported and affirmed of all different backgrounds.
Okay, thank you. And Veronica?
Thank you. Well, I was tutoring and working with a handful of students when that incident occurred, and I heard many similar feelings. I think there's no going back and changing what happened. So moving forward, I think that we need to make sure that our school staff is having conversations with students. There's advisors at the school, and there's a way to have a rapport. I taught middle school before. There's a way to have a rapport at that age where these conversations might come out sooner. Students can come to teachers and feel more comfortable and more confident. The school board can support putting in times when students meet in groups and supporting that more. When the students presented at one of the last board meetings, I didn't feel, there was a little part where I didn't feel like it was as thoroughly respected for some of the work that they'd done. It was kind of brushed under that, oh, we've already got some of this starting, but there was a clear comment that we didn't follow through on some of the things we put in place after that incident. And I think we need to look back and make sure we followed through on everything, and that we've shown that what we said was going to get done. And I really want to make sure that we do that going forward. Other than that, I think, again, it's just the daily conversations to make sure that everybody feels like they're being heard. Melissa said it beautifully, the quiet listening. We need to sit back a little more often and just make sure we hear from more of the voices.
Thank you. And Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to say I agree with everything that Veronica and Melissa said on this and the previous questions. But what I would add, what came to my attention, because I have a lot of connections into the Asian community and also the African American community and all the different ethnic groups. But the part that seemed to really go downhill was when the names of the accused was released, and then they came back to school and all hell broke loose. That's how it was described to me. And then the result of it ending up with a settlement to one side, when the people who were most injured by this, they didn't get a settlement. So it looks, from the perspective of the community, it looks bad. So I think we need to be careful how, when there's an incident like this, how it gets out. That's the first thing that I would add. In terms of the transparency and so forth, and people having a chance to vent themselves. I think one of the things that we've seen is the meeting times have gone out of control. So we've got to find a way to break that up so that a proper decision could be made, but people still have the opportunity to voice their opinions. That's okay. What I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So we'll ask the next question. We'll start with Veronica, but how should the school board support students in online learning during the coronavirus pandemic? And how do you think the district should transition to in-person learning? What are the indicators that will tell you it is safe to return?
There's only a minute and a half to answer this. We might need a year. So I actually am paying close attention. I'm so lucky that my son's first grade teacher is the teacher I taught next door to last year. So I feel super connected to his class and I'm paying really careful attention. But I'm also getting to listen into some of the distance learning for our neighbor as we do that out in our yard together sometimes. And so I'm really trying to see as many different styles of this as I can. And I said in the ATA meeting, I'd love to see more Zoom learning and log into other teachers' classes so that I could know what they're doing and where we could support. Two things. One, in the lower grade levels, we've got to support the teachers in running small groups online. That's really, really a need of the kids. They need the social interaction, even facilitated on Zoom, where they're hearing their peers more than short answers. And at the upper grades as well, we need to make sure that the teachers have time to give attention to each of the students, not just delivering this big blanket, okay, you're on Zoom, here it is, quick, raise your hand, okay, you got an answer, turn it in. I think we really have to make sure we're giving them that support. And for going back to school, I think we're going to have to listen to the different needs of the parents. People are going to be ready at different levels, and we need to get the students that need it most first. The students with parents who cannot be sitting by them like myself and supporting them every step of the way and teaching them at home. We've got to get them back in the classroom first. Then we can give parents some different levels of returning through a hybrid or through full time and really start that dialogue now.
Brian?
Hi, something awkward just happened to my sound. Anyway, the first thing we should do is elect a software engineer to the school board. And because technology is my big thing. And specifically, I think that now this is a truly odd situation. It relates to equity as well, and the digital divide, because previously we just had to have enough technology in the classroom. But now all of a sudden the technology at home is having much greater impact. So I think I would like to see the school district be able to take more responsibility and maybe hire some temp workers, temp IT people that are out of work, and get them to help the families to deal with their network situations. What I do here is I have 2 internet connections. So I'm sure at least I've always got an internet connection. I think that's very important for students. And ultimately, I would like to see Albany be more self-sufficient. I'd like us to have our own network so that we don't have to rely on, but it's basically each home is a completely different set of problems. So I think definitely more support in the IT area is what Albany students need.
Okay, and Melissa.
Thank you. So, and I agree with Veronica, a minute and a half is not long enough to answer this question. But as far as supporting students and teachers right now in this time of online learning, I would say, as Brian was saying, that it's very important to make sure that families have access to the technology that they need at Marin, and I know at different schools as well, at the middle school as well, just the 2 schools where I am. I know that Chromebooks are being made available and hotspots also, and that's so important to try to get somewhere near equalizing the access to technology across different families. And for our teachers as well, we need to make sure that they have both professional development wise, the resources that they need to be able to teach in this new format, and also just the tech that they need. As far as returning to school, and also just at Marin, we've really been trying to be deliberate about supporting each other, supporting different parents, and we've had different parents in place who are trying to reach out when parents want to opt into that. So just realizing how isolated we are right now and the importance of really encouraging each other to reach out and to form these communities. And as far as returning to school when we're able to, when it is safe, as Veronica was saying, I think it's so important to make sure that the children who really need to be there first are prioritized, both as far as parents or caregivers who are able to be at home or not, and also children who learn differently, who particularly need to be, or who would be greatly benefited by being in person with their teachers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question, for the next question, we'll start with Brian. What will you do to address the issue of housing for Albany School District staff and faculty?
Yeah, I think we should build housing. We should look into, is there a way we can use school property that's in a way that's going to be comfortable for people. If I were a teacher, I don't think I would want to live right next to the classroom, like it being kind of a company town. But I think there's ways we can explore that. I think maybe some sort of voucher or some part of the compensation to cover the ridiculous cost of housing in Albany might be helpful. I think in general, this ties into, because this is a community problem, and I think Veronica has alluded to the fact that there needs to be closer cooperation between the city and the school district, and nothing could be truer could be said, because it really is a common problem. So I think we need to work together with the city to look at the zoning. I think there's things the school can do with solar energy specifically to help fund some of this stuff. And so I think, those are things we need to create an environment where teachers are going to be willing to come here. I think that's what I have for now.
Okay. Melissa, would you like to address the?
Sure, and I would say that this isn't an issue that I've had a lot of opportunity to learn about. I would be happy to learn more about this issue because it is so important, particularly, well, for various reasons, but especially being someone who is focused on and concerned about having a diverse and inclusive environment and bringing members of all different ethnic groups and socioeconomic backgrounds and identities and et cetera. The fact that it is so expensive to live here does make it so that there is a certain prevention that happens with who is able to be here, and the more inclusive an environment that we can have for our teachers and our students, the stronger community we're going to be. I would certainly support, and I would want to have the opportunity to be more educated about these issues, but I would certainly support changes to zoning laws where the sort of fabric and the environment of our community is still going to be the same wonderful community that it is, but where we can have more multi-dwelling housing so that we can have more of an opportunity to be welcoming to people who are in different socioeconomic levels and can still be able to be comfortable here.
Thank you. And now Veronica.
Well, this speaks really, really close to my heart. So we live in Albany because my family owns our house in Albany. Otherwise, we couldn't afford to live in Albany. So we feel this struggle every single day. It's really expensive here, and the teachers' salaries don't afford those teachers the ability to live in our city. Now, having teachers who live in your city and teach in your city, especially in a small town like Albany, and their kids go to our schools, that adds a level of commitment that you can't get without those teachers being a full and complete part of your community, or at least having the opportunity to. Some teachers may choose that they want the distance, and I completely understand and appreciate that. But the more invested that we can be in having a well-balanced offering so that there's something that we can do for the teachers to keep them close and feeling a part of Albany is really important in drawing in teachers who, again, might not be able to afford to live here, but having that shortened commute, the ability to walk to work, then they're experiencing the safe routes to school. They're seeing students on the way and saying hello. They're chatting with parents on the way in. That just warms up the entire community and adds a level that we couldn't get otherwise. This is, again, where our school district and our city need to work together. We have to work in tandem to make something like this happen. I would love to see our schoolyards greened up and more hospitable and all of those things. And then maybe we could do that in a way where we get funding that could help us with a project like this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for the next question, we will start with Melissa. Do you feel that civics education in Albany schools is sufficient, and why?
Thank you. I am not sure that I am as knowledgeable about this as I perhaps would be if my children were a bit older. I would say that even at the ages that they are, so 3rd grade and 6th grade, they do understand the importance of taking part in they have opinions about the people that they would support in our political system. More on a national level, they don't know as much on a local level, although they are a little bit knowledgeable, especially having a senator who's, on the national stage. They are a little knowledgeable about that as well. They understand the importance of being members of the community, of being members of their school community as well, and contributing to their school community. And I think that at least both of them have been at Marin. They've done a very good job of letting them understand how they are members of that school community, that they all contribute, that they all play a part. And I think that there's a clear connection between that on a smaller scale and what they actually see day to day, and then understanding how they can be a part of a larger community, statewide, nationwide. So I do appreciate the sort of personal responsibility and knowledge of current issues and being knowledgeable about different politicians' stances on those issues and the importance of those as they touch their personal lives.
Okay. So, Veronica, what do you have to say about this question?
I agree with Melissa. I need to look into exactly what's offered in our civics classes at the higher levels, but from an elementary standpoint, I think, again, we do that same thing she said. We promote community, we give students a chance to take responsibility, to step up. I think we can do more. I think we can have more with the student governments, and it can go through our entire district. We have a small district, so we can feel unity across our entire school district, which would be a really cool feeling if you got to be the president of the district. I love that we have student board members, and they are impressive, really impressive, and I would look forward to working with them. When I was in high school, I was part of youth and government, and through the Albany Berkeley YMCA. That was one of the best experiences of my entire life. It was so amazing, and I learned so much. I learned more there than I did in the classroom. So the more that we could bring in programs like that into our high school and really encourage our students to be a part of things like that, could enhance what we're offering right now. And then we can kind of break that down and scaffold it up from the lower levels with our younger students and really give kids the opportunity to experience what it's like to be part of government. They'll still find that there are a lot of things that are difficult to work with when they get up in government and in the higher levels and in working in a community. And I think that those are challenges that would be great to have them experience on a micro level from a younger age.
Thank you. And Brian?
Well, I'm going to go with yes, and the proof is in the pudding. You look at the results, you look at the level of engagement that Veronica and Melissa have just been talking about, but not just on the school board, on the advisory boards in the city. And when I was on the Social and Economic Justice Commission, I served with a high school student, and we worked together on deciding what to do with the soda tax money. And one of the things we worked together to decide to get the drinking water refilling stations. But what that said, it could be better. And what I would really like to see, and something that League of Women Voters has talked about, is lowering the voting age. I think if the voting age was lowered to 17, then students would have an opportunity to get more involved on a practical level, and it's kind of like this use or lose it thing. You can talk, teach all you want in school, but if you don't go out and do something. So that's why I think we're doing very well in Albany, but there's always room for improvement. And I think some of it needs to be steered in a particular direction, particularly around civil rights issues. especially with the things that are coming up the last 4 years. I think that we could use more, but we're doing very well. That's how I feel about this topic.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for this next question, we shall start with Veronica. What are your views on climate change and environment-focused instruction in AUSD? Students' desire for action and a far greater level of civic engagement seems to be at odds with the administration's more hesitant business as usual approach, according to this questioner.
Well, if it were up to me, we would have edible schoolyards at every campus, and we would have classes outdoors. We would have the cooking and gardening programs in our classrooms all the time. We would take that all the way through high school, because we are lacking in schools across California and the nation. We're lacking those other skills in being taught in our schools. So I come from Berkeley Unified. I was one of the kids who dug out the edible schoolyard. I got to be in the kitchen there at King Middle School cooking. And then my mom was an instructor for the California Nutrition Network and the edible schoolyard grants in the elementary schools. And I spent my high school and college days teaching classes with her about cooking and nutrition and in the gardens. And then I worked on an organic farm. I've also been working with some of the parents at Cornell who would like to green the schoolyard. There's no reason our kids should be going to school on blacktop. We're redoing 2 school sites. They're going to be beautiful buildings. But have we thought about greening and sustainability? And could we put water tanks under the asphalt to collect runoff water? And we get grants from Caltrans because they can't collect enough on their highways. There are so many things we could do. Brian mentioned solar. I think that's a great step. And once we get kids involved in that and feeling like they're making a physical change happen, I think that that's a civic engagement that would make them feel so fulfilled.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
So, I agree with all that as usual. I think climate change is a very important thing, but again, I want to kind of look for ways that we can get the children involved. Like, can we get them involved? Can we teach them job skills in this process? So, and yeah, I think solar is a big part of this. If we could get funding to put in solar panels, have job training program for the high school age youth, so maybe that's something they could go on to do. And then farming is a valuable skill in society too. So I think, and I just love what we're doing with our new schools, with the middle school and with the elementary schools that are being rebuilt. How it's a green school system, and I think just getting the kids involved with what the city and the school district is already doing would be a big step. In terms of the environment, I mean, we need to teach it more. We need to make kids more and more aware of what's happening, because they are going to have a very challenging world to survive in, and we have to try to help prepare them for something that we've never experienced. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Melissa?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with so much of what Veronica said as far as the importance of making the school yards as green as possible. I've appreciated so much having a designated garden parent in our classroom every year, and saw my children sort of delight when they grew the vegetable and then ate the vegetable, and they were more excited about eating the vegetable that they had grown than if it were, something we were trying to kind of get them to do at dinner time. And so I agree with what Brian was saying also about the importance of getting the children involved and having them be excited about that when it's something that they're personally involved in. And I think that right now in particular, while we see the very real personal impact that climate change is having on all of us, I think that I mean, it's a horrible situation, but it's a wonderful opportunity to make clear to our children that this is not just some sort of theoretical idea, that this is impacting our day-to-day in very real, sometimes very dangerous, and certainly very harmful and just sort of limiting ways. And as with a number of things, I think that it's very important to have resources so that we can bring in people who are experts in these areas. We had a wonderful parent education night at Marin where we had experts come and speak, and that was just from parents in the district who were knowledgeable and they were passionate about this. I don't want to require all teachers to become experts in every possible thing that we want to learn about. I think we can support them and provide resources so they can teach our children.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, for the next question, we will start with Brian. Are the services for students with learning difficulties sufficient, or what needs to be improved?
Well, I'm going to say absolutely not, or they wouldn't have had to form a support group over the summer. And this is, of all the groups that are most affected by COVID-19, I'm going to say this is probably the most acute, because being the parent of a disabled child is a challenging thing. I've known people over the years that it's like you've got all these things on top of another. You've got a stressful job. You've got to take more responsibility for your child's education than normal. And COVID-19 has hit really badly these families, because then all of a sudden we're in cases where the child was away. And we've got a responsibility as a school district to, we have to provide the same quality of education, at least as long as it's feasible. Whenever feasible, we've got to try to find a way to make that possible. So I think this is very, next to the different ethnic groups that are being persecuted, this is the most impacted group in Albany over the last 4 years. The people that we're replacing on the school board, these are the biggest issues I think they've had to deal with, and it's going to be a big part of what we'll be looking at, how we can help them.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
I ended my time.
And Melissa?
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what Brian just said. I think that there's certainly an effort being made, and certain places, services are going better than others, but in general, there's a need there. And I've been very excited to see the forming of the disability squad, and have some friends who are members of that committee, and have also gotten to work with some parents of disabled learning challenged children who are parents in the Marin group, and heard that there was a concern that when the budget was balanced, that it was done on the backs of children who learn differently, and families of children who learn differently. And then that should never be what's happening, even though we're going to be forced to make difficult decisions when there's a certain amount of money and we don't know what's going to be there. But when we're losing paraeducators, that harms us all. It makes it more difficult, first and foremost, for the children and the parents who need those services, for the teachers who are teaching the larger classes and now need to try to figure out how to address the needs of different children who are at all different levels, for the children who are not getting that sort of focus. And so I think that it's incredibly important. Also, the district loses a certain amount of money when it is not meeting the needs of those children in lawsuits and otherwise. And so in many ways, it's extremely important for us to listen to these groups like the Disability Squad that are being formed to advocate for these children. So we're not guessing what they need, but we're listening to families directly.
Thank you. And Veronica?
Our paraeducators are so critically important. So the fact that we've had any discussions about cutting them is mind-boggling. I think the Albany Disability Squad is an amazing thing to have now, but it's a little bit of a bummer that the parents had to go to that length to form a squad to get the needs of their children met. But I don't see any reason it didn't happen, because being in a classroom last year in Albany, unfortunately, was really difficult. I had days where there were unsafe situations for students because I didn't have a paraeducator or the support that was needed for those children, and it impacted the entire classroom. and there was nothing that I could do about it. In some of those instances, it was really, really difficult. And the parents need more communication across the board about what's going on, both the positives and the challenges of what's happening. I agree with Melissa exactly with the point that the district is losing money from lawsuits and things like that. We're also losing students. I know of many, many students who've left the district for other schools just because they couldn't get their needs met here. Our math and our math supports at the high school level and somewhat at the middle school level really need to be looked at, especially for our different learners. That is a huge area. We have families paying a private entity in our city a lot of money that maybe they would donate to our district instead if our math program was stronger for all students. So I think there's a lot of little areas we can look at it, and in the bigger picture, we just need to look at it.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to have one last question here before we move to the final statements, but it's not of the format of the 1.5 minutes. It's really just a yes or no answer. So I'm going to, I guess, start with Melissa here. So do you support Vote 16, where 16 and 17-year-olds can vote for school board elections?
Yes, I do. Am I just supposed to say yes and that's it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And Veronica? Veronica?
You're muted, Veronica.
Said I'm really bad at this mute and unmute thing. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And Brian?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let me just say, before these candidates give their closing statements, I have a few remarks on behalf of the LWVBAE. Thank you to the candidates for running for office and for your participation this evening. I also want to thank the audience for engaging in our democracy. And for further information about upcoming forums, the candidates, pros and cons, and positions on ballot measures, please visit the League's website, lwvbae.org or votersedge.org/ca. We invite you to join the League to help us engage voters and defend democracy. We do so much more than voter registration and education. Visit our website and social media accounts at LWVBAE. The deadline to register to vote is October 19th this year. You can register to vote online at the Secretary of State's website, sos.ca.gov. Remember to vote by mail or at the polls by Tuesday, November 3rd. Now, the candidates will make their closing statements. We will reverse the order that we began with, and each candidate will give a closing statement for a 1-minute time. And so we shall then start with Melissa.
Thank you, and thank you again for the chance to speak to everybody this evening. I think I would just say why I decided to kind of throw my hat in the ring here at all. Like I said, I got the opportunity to really focus on and work on issues of different access and different ability and disproportionate impact of our different families in our district based on identity and background and learning differences, etc. And I would feel honored to have the opportunity to advocate for all those different members of the community. I also think that it's so important to diversify our curriculum and our teaching body during these times of racial unrest. One of the things that people say most is, how did I not know about these things before? And so giving our children the opportunity to learn is a wonderful thing. And also, I just think it's so important to be a collaborator, to be somebody who can build bridges and who can listen to different members of the group, who's not going to kind of shoot from the hip and say things that they can't get behind. And I think I have the right temperament for that. Thank you.
And Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Beall, software engineer for Albany School Board. I've got a bachelor's degree in mathematics. I've worked in the community for a long time. My top priority is safe reopening of schools, and beyond that, addressing some of the equity issues. And in terms of the school board itself, I want to cultivate an inclusive culture of respect. I want to make sure that everyone's heard, that we're having the proper transparency, and that that we somehow get things done. I feel that I'm the best candidate for this position because of my background and familiarity with the Albany community. I'm asking you for your vote and for your support. You can look up further at BEALL 4 Albany.nationbuilder.com.
Okay, thank you. And Veronica.
Thank you. So I'm a lifelong educator, and I really look forward to bringing that view and that experience to the school board in Albany. I'm familiar with our parents' needs, many of the community in this district, and I want to give them and all the other children the best that I can, and that we can. I work hard for our community. I volunteered my time to start the outdoor dining and help support Albany Inside Out all along Solano Avenue and San Pablo Avenue. So I'm very willing to give and support. I look really deeply at the issues that are in our district right now and supporting the needs of all learners. Sorry, my son's coming in. These little ones right here, who are the ones that we really need to be paying the best attention to. And there went my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Well, let me just say, give a virtual round of applause for all of our candidates. I know our audience can't necessarily show that to you, but I just want to thank you all for attending and wish you a good night.
Thank you, League of Women Voters.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.